We are accustomed to living in a world where power and influence are clearly defined. In any organization, be it a large corporation, a school, or a government institution, there is a hierarchy. We have bosses, directors, teachers, commanders, people whose positions are enshrined in job descriptions printed on business cards and confirmed by the size of their office or the number of stars on their shoulder boards. We see their position, their badge, or their office and understand this person is in charge. When such a person gives an order or instruction, we generally obey without question because we understand that they have formal authority backed by a system of rules, punishments, and rewards. This seems logical, clear, and predictable. But what if this isn't always the case? What if in your life there are situations where you follow someone who is not your direct superior, has no official authority, and may even be lower than you on the formal ladder, but their words and actions somehow convince you? Such situations arise much more often than we think, and they reveal a surprising truth about human behavior and the dynamics of social interactions. This is the phenomenon of hidden leadership, an invisible force that operates in our daily relationships, compelling people to follow those who, seemingly, have no right to command. Imagine a typical workday. In your team, there's a manager, your direct boss. But there's also a colleague. Let's call him Sid. Sid does not hold a managerial position, he has no subordinates, and his salary is perhaps the same as yours. However, every time a complex problem arises in a project, or when an important decision needs to be made, everyone turns to Sid for advice. His ideas are discussed with special attention, and if he proposes a solution, the team most often accepts it without question, even if the manager hasn't yet expressed their opinion. Suddenly, Sid becomes the informal center of decision-making, and his influence on the team turns out to be much stronger than that of the person sitting in the leader's chair. Why does this happen? Sid doesn't give orders, he doesn't threaten sanctions, he just speaks, and people obey his unspoken authority. Or let's take an example from family life. In most families, there is a nominal head, usually one of the parents. But sometimes it turns out that key decisions, from choosing a vacation spot to a major purchase, are made under the influence of another family member's opinion, for instance, a younger sister who always knows what's best. Or an older son whose word seems so weighty that everyone agrees with him, even if he's not the most authoritative by age or position. This doesn't mean that the head of the family isn't important, but the real, unstated leadership may belong to someone else. This person's opinion is not challenged, their proposals are readily accepted, and their presence in a discussion immediately gives it a certain direction. This enigma of hidden influence is found everywhere, among friends, when one person always suggests where to go and what to do, and their ideas are always accepted, in public organizations where an informal leader, without an official position, is the driving force behind all initiatives, even in a queue where one person showing confidence and clearly articulating the problem can lead the entire group. This goes much deeper than mere charisma or luck, although these qualities undoubtedly play a role. Hidden leadership is rooted in more subtle psychological mechanisms and deep social dynamics. The phenomenon we are discussing has much in common with what psychologists call social influence and conformity. This is not necessarily malice or manipulation. Often, people obey not because of direct orders, but because of more subtle signals and the very situation they find themselves in. This may be due to the fact that the human brain is constantly looking for ways to simplify decision-making, especially in conditions of uncertainty or complexity. If someone appears confident, knowledgeable, or simply proactive, the brain subconsciously tends to transfer some of the responsibility for decision-making to them. This is a kind of mental shortcut that allows us to conserve cognitive resources. Let's look at a few real-life examples to better understand this phenomenon. Example 1. The influence of an expert without a diploma. ***. Imagine your computer breaks down and you don't know what to do. Your company has an IT department, but your colleague, Andy, known for his passion for technology, approaches you and says, "Listen, I had the exact same problem. Try this and this." He is not a system administrator, he doesn't have a higher education in IT, but he speaks with such confidence and explains the steps in such detail that you unhesitatingly follow his instructions. Why? Because his perceived competence in this area instantly bestows upon him informal authority. You trust him more than an unknown specialist on the other end of the phone because you see his confidence and hear his convincing arguments. Andy took the initiative, offered a concrete solution, and his calm confidence convinced you of his correctness. Example 2. The power of consistency and initiative. In any student group, there's a head student who has formal authority. But it often happens that all extracurricular activities, fundraising for teacher gifts, or planning trips are managed by a completely different person. For example, Margaret. Margaret was never elected head student, but she is always the first to suggest, let's go on an excursion. Who's for going to the cinema? We should congratulate Petrov on his birthday. And surprisingly, her proposals are almost always accepted, and if she assigns responsibility, it's taken for granted. Why? Because Margaret demonstrates consistency and commitment in her actions. She always sees things through, shows initiative, and takes responsibility. Over time, people automatically begin to trust her judgment and follow her, because they know, if Margaret takes on a task, it will get done. Her proactiveness and reliability have created an unspoken belief in the group that she knows how to organize things best. Example 3, the snowball effect and social proof. You start a new job. On your first day, you need to choose where to go for lunch. A colleague suggests, let's go to the cafe around the corner. They have a great business lunch. You don't know this person, you're not sure about their taste, but then a couple more colleagues nod and say, oh yes, I eat there often, great place. And just like that, half the office is heading to this cafe. You'll likely go with them even if you had other options. Why? Because the principle of social proof was at work. If several people are already following someone's example or supporting an idea, others are more likely to join, believing that if everyone else is going, it must be right. This forms a kind of informal herd mentality, but in this context, it works for hidden leadership. The person who first proposed the idea becomes the unspoken leader for that lunch because others supported them. Example 4, invisible reciprocity. Imagine that in your department there's an employee who is always willing to help. He might spend his time explaining a new program to you, sharing useful contacts, or simply giving valuable advice on solving a complex problem, expecting nothing in return. Let's call him Andrew. When Andrew one day comes to you with a request to support his idea at a meeting, you'll most likely do so willingly. Why? Because the principle of reciprocity comes into play. You feel an unspoken obligation to return his kindness. Andrew didn't ask for your support directly at the moment he was helping, but his previous actions created a strong foundation for his future influence. You perceive him as someone who provides value, and therefore you are willing to listen to his opinion and follow him. All these examples show that hidden leadership is not a myth, but a reality. It manifests not through formal orders, but through subtle, often unconscious psychological mechanisms. People obey not because they are forced, but because they want to follow someone who seems competent, consistent, reliable, or who has already earned their trust through demonstrating value or initiative. This is not manipulation in a negative sense, but rather the use of natural human tendencies towards cooperation, trust, and seeking authority in those who demonstrate certain qualities. This invisible force goes much deeper than mere charisma or luck. Charisma is more of an outward shine that can attract attention, but it is not always capable of sustaining influence in the long term. Luck is a coincidence. Hidden leadership, however, is the result of deliberate or subconscious actions that shape other people's perception of you. It is a kind of social capital that accumulates over time and manifests in situations where formal authority is silent. We will see how people sometimes obey not because of direct orders, but because of more subtle signals and the very situation they find themselves in. These can include confident posture, a calm and decisive tone of voice, clarity and precision in articulating thoughts, the ability to take responsibility, all these seemingly insignificant details that collectively form the image of an informal leader. In the next part, we will more closely examine these psychological principles that underpin hidden leadership and learn how to apply them. Now that we have realized that hidden leadership is not a myth but a very real phenomenon, it's time to delve into its foundations. We will examine the psychological principles that underpin this invisible influence. It is important to note right away, this is not about manipulation, not about dark psychology or clever tricks to make people do what you want. On the contrary, it's about understanding natural human tendencies, social dynamics, and how people make decisions when confronted with informal authority. It's about how, by acting in a certain way, you can naturally earn trust and respect, becoming a person whom others want to follow. Firstly, it's perceived authority or competence. If a person, even without a formal title or position, appears knowledgeable, confident, and competent in any area, people are naturally inclined to trust them and follow their advice or instructions. This is an intuitive reaction. We seek out those whom we believe possess greater knowledge or experience, especially in situations of uncertainty. Imagine you find yourself lost in an unfamiliar city. Most likely, you'll ask for directions from someone who confidently stands with a map, quickly scrolls through it, or a person who looks like a local, calm, oriented in space, unlike a bewildered tourist with the same lost expression as you. The first person, by their confidence, their demeanor, their behavior, is instantly perceived as a more competent source of information, and you are ready to accept their instructions without hesitation. Or another, more dramatic example. Suddenly, some emergency occurs. For instance, a fire alarm goes off in a shopping mall. There's panic all around, people are rushing about. But then someone appears who, maintaining absolute calm, loudly and clearly gives instructions. Calm down. Everyone, let's go to emergency exit number 3, over there. They are not a rescuer, not a police officer, they don't wear a uniform. But their calmness, confidence in their voice, clarity, and logical instructions instantly set them apart from the crowd. People start following their instructions because their behavior conveys competence and control over the situation. Their perceived authority is not a title, but their ability to act effectively in a crisis. They become an informal leader, and everyone follows them, trusting their judgment because in the midst of chaos, their voice sounds like the voice of reason and solution. Secondly, consistency and commitment are important. People tend to trust those who are consistent in their actions, who always keep their promises and demonstrate reliability. If you regularly show initiative, always arrive on time, fulfill your promises, keep your word, and demonstrate reliability, others will begin to perceive you as a dependable and influential person whose example can be followed. This is a very powerful principle because it builds trust gradually over time. For example, in any work team, there's always someone who consistently takes on the organization of team lunches, birthdays, or corporate events. This might be Nora from accounting. She always remembers important dates, is the first to suggest celebration options, takes charge of collecting money, and handles all necessary preparations. Her suggestions for choosing a restaurant or a gift for a colleague are simply taken for granted because everyone knows Nora always follows through, her organization is flawless, and she can be relied upon. She doesn't ask for permission for her actions, she simply acts, and her initiative, coupled with consistency, makes her an informal leader in this area. People readily follow her because she has proven her reliability and commitment to the common cause. Thirdly, the principle of social proof works. As social beings, we subconsciously orient ourselves towards what others are doing, especially in situations where we lack our own information or confidence. If several people are already following someone's example, others are more likely to join, believing that if everyone is doing it, then it must be right. It's like a snowball effect. Someone launches a new, perhaps slightly unusual initiative in a team, for example, proposing a new work methodology or an unconventional approach to solving a problem. At first, there are doubts. But if one or two key team members, perhaps already possessing hidden leadership, begin to support this idea and actively participate in its implementation, the rest of the team gradually joins in, even if they were initially hesitant or skeptical. They see that others are doing it and it's working, and this becomes sufficient proof that the idea is worthwhile. The person who was the initiator gains unspoken support and leads the group because their idea received social approval. Fourthly, the principle of reciprocity manifests in its subtle form. This is not always about a favor for a favor in the direct sense. It refers to the idea that if you help others, provide value, share knowledge, or offer support without expecting immediate reciprocation, people are more likely to be open to your influence in the future. They will feel an unspoken, subconscious obligation to respond in kind when you yourself ask for help or propose your idea. For example, in the office, there's a colleague, Harry, who is always willing to help. He might spend half an hour of his working time to thoroughly explain how to use a new program, even if it's not part of his direct duties. He always shares useful life hacks, interesting articles on your topic, or is simply ready to listen if you have a problem. Harry does this sincerely, expecting nothing in return. But when he one day comes to you with a request to support his idea at a meeting, you will most likely do so willingly and even with enthusiasm. Why? Because you feel an unspoken obligation, and most importantly, you perceive Harry as someone who brings value to your life. His proposals are much more readily accepted because he has already invested in relationships with you and other colleagues. His kindness and generosity have created a credit of trust that he can use to exert influence. All these principles are based on building trust and respect through actions, not through direct control or manipulation. They work on a subconscious level, shaping your image in the eyes of others as a person worthy of being followed. Hidden leadership does not require shouting, threats, or formal positions. It is born from your ability to demonstrate value, competence, reliability, initiate actions, and facilitate collective decisions. It's not just a set of tricks, but a deep understanding of human psychology and the use of subtle positive influence. In the next, concluding part, we will delve into how these principles manifest very quickly, sometimes in a matter of seconds, and how one can develop the qualities of a hidden leader for effective influence in any life situation. Finally, we have reached the concluding part of our exploration of hidden leadership. We have already understood why people obey not only formal superiors but also those who possess unspoken influence. We have examined psychological principles such as perceived competence, consistency, social proof, and reciprocity, which form this informal authority. Now it's time to talk about the most important thing, how these principles manifest in everyday life, sometimes within seconds, and how you can cultivate these qualities within yourself to become a more effective, positive, and informal leader in any sphere of your life. It is important to emphasize that hidden leadership is not a set of tricks to control people against their will. It is not about dark psychology or manipulations that exploit the vulnerabilities of others. On the contrary, it is a deep understanding of human psychology and the use of subtle, positive influence that is based on respect, trust, and the provision of value. It is the ability to lead others by demonstrating example, exhibiting perceived competence, and creating an atmosphere in which others want to follow you, rather than feeling compelled. The whole secret is that these subtle cues act very quickly, often within 30 seconds. This pertains to first impressions, your self-confidence, the ability to set the right tone in a conversation or situation. Our brain acts like a sophisticated scanner, constantly analyzing the environment and the people around us. Within the first few seconds of an encounter, we subconsciously form an opinion about a person, how confident, competent, and reliable they are. And these initial, often unconscious, assessments play a huge role in whether a person will be perceived as a potential leader. Think about the moment you enter a new room where strangers are gathered. If you move confidently with straight posture, your gaze is calm and open, and there's a light, friendly smile on your face, you are already sending signals that speak of your inner strength and confidence. Compare this to someone who slouches, avoids eye contact, and looks insecure. Even without a single word, your first impression is already contributing to your hidden leadership. This also applies to the ability to set the right tone in a conversation or situation. Suppose a meeting is chaotic, everyone is interrupting each other, and no decision is being made. A person with hidden leadership may not be the manager, but they can intervene calmly yet firmly, say, "Let's take a minute break. I think we need to first define our overall goal and then move on to the details." Their calm voice, their logical suggestion, their composure, all of this instantly draws attention and makes others listen. They take on the role of an informal moderator, and people follow their suggestion because they offer a way out of the deadlock and demonstrate clarity of thought. This is not about forcing someone to confess something, but about making them willing to follow you or agree with you because you create the conditions for productive interaction. True leadership is manifested not in titles and positions, but in the ability to inspire, guide, and exert influence through a deep understanding of human nature. It is not directive management, but rather an attraction that you create through your qualities and actions. How can you cultivate these qualities within yourself? 1. Develop perceived competence. Continuously learn, deepen your knowledge and skills in areas that interest you. Become an expert in something and people will naturally gravitate towards you for advice. Carry yourself with confidence, speak clearly, precisely, maintain eye contact, be attentive to your interlocutor. Demonstrate your knowledge not arrogantly but through a willingness to share it and help others. For example, if you are proficient in a certain software, offer a colleague a short masterclass when they are struggling. Your willingness to help and your competence will be noticed. 2. Be consistent and reliable. Always keep your promises even if they are minor. Be on time. If you take on something, see it through to the end. Reliability is the foundation of trust. If people know they can count on you, they will be more willing to follow you. Remember that colleague, Maria from accounting, who always flawlessly organizes events. Her leadership in this area is a result of her impeccable consistency. 3. Utilize the power of social proof. If you have an idea, don't be afraid to voice it, but also seek out like-minded individuals who can support it. If others see that your idea has support, it will be easier for them to join. Be the first to start something new and set an example. For instance, if you want to implement a new approach at work, show your successes on a small pilot project, and this will be the best proof of your idea's effectiveness. 4. Practice the principle of reciprocity. Be generous with help, support, and useful advice. Share knowledge, contacts, and your time. Offer services without expecting immediate reciprocation. Remember Oleg from our example. He didn't ask for reciprocity, but his willingness to help created an unspoken obligation in others to return the favor. The more you invest in relationships, the more social capital you accumulate, which you can then use for influence. 5. Develop emotional intelligence. The ability to understand and manage your own emotions as well as to recognize the emotions of others is the cornerstone of hidden leadership. Sense the group's mood, empathize with individuals, and be sensitive to their needs. This will allow you to choose the right approach in every situation and say what will resonate with people. 6. Be proactive and take initiative. Don't wait to be told what to do. Offer solutions, take responsibility, start acting. Initiative is always perceived as a sign of leadership qualities. Even if your initiative isn't always perfect, the mere act of showing it creates the image of someone who is ready to lead. After all, being a leader means being someone whom others naturally look up to, whose opinion they listen to, and whom they follow. It's not about giving orders, but about being a beacon that others orient themselves by. Hidden leadership is a force that is shaped by your actions and your character. It does not depend on position, but entirely on your influence over others, which you create every day, step by step. Start applying these principles in your life, and you will notice how your influence grows, and people around you will readily follow your ideas and examples.